Let Yemenis have a social contract and to have the rule of law. This is the only under one Yemen.
Yemen is for the Yemenis, and this is a Yemeni solution. It's not going to be a US solution.
The dialogue starts not from elites, but from people down.
The experience of my country comes into my mind. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly blessed to witness you all here in this workshop. It's my privilege to be with you all. I welcome all the participants in this workshop about the peace initiatives in Yemen. Before we initiate the event, I would like to give my regards and appreciation to all the people who made this event a reality. This could have not been possible without shares and contribution of you all. In this context, I would like to introduce to you Dr. Corey Willinger, the Director of the Center of Mediation at the University of Pretoria.
Everyone to the seminar jointly hosted by the Center for Mediation in Africa, which is hosted by the Department of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria and the International Christian University in Japan. I'm Dr. Willinger, and I'm currently the Acting Director at the Center for Mediation in Africa. It's a great pleasure to also have here the former and founding director of the Center, Prof. Laurie Nathan, as one of our speakers. I would like to extend a special welcome to Your Excellencies, the ambassadors who are with us today, our honorable guests from the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, representatives from governments, civil society organizations, and think tanks, and then most importantly of all, our students. It's so important for our students that they experience such events. I'm especially pleased that there are not only postgraduate but also undergraduate students with us here today. These events bring to life the things that we learn about in the classroom. And they remind us that we're not just exploring theories and ideas in books, but that what we're busy with at some level actually has life or death consequences. And nowhere is this more the case than in Yemen, which is a constant reminder of our collective failure to secure basic freedoms and rights or to forge or sustain any kind of lasting peace. The seminar was the initiative of Anas Al-Hamati, who is currently completing his master's at the International Christian University in Japan. He contacted me about hosting the seminar at a time when a monthly newsletter that I subscribe to had as its title, "Being a Child in Yemen Has the Stuff of Nightmares." Here are a few extracts from the newsletter that I wanted to share that really stayed with me. On 19 October, UNICEF spokesperson James Elder briefed the press in Geneva after his return from Yemen. He wrote, "The Yemen conflict has just hit another shameful milestone. 10,000 children have been killed or maimed since fighting started in March 2015. That's the equivalent of 4 children every day." In August, UNICEF Executive Director Henrietta Ford told the UN General Assembly, "Being a child in Yemen is the stuff of nightmares," where the title of the newsletter came from. And she said 1 child dies every 10 minutes from preventable causes, including malnutrition and vaccine-preventable diseases. And this is something that I want us to hold as we discuss peace initiatives in Yemen. The newsletter also shared the words of Yemeni lawyer and poet Abdullah al-Barouduni, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, from the poem From Exile to Exile, which I'd like to read before handing over to Anas. I thought it was a very moving poem. "My country is handed over from one tyrant to the next, a worse tyrant, from one prison to another, from one exile to another. It is colonized by the observed invader and the hidden one, handed over by one beast to 2, like an emaciated camel. In the caverns of its death, my country neither dies nor recovers. It digs in the muted graves, looking for its pure origins, for its springtime promise that slept behind its eyes, for the dream that will come, for the phantom that hid. It moves from one overwhelming night to a darker night. My country grieves in its own boundaries and in other people's land, and even on its own soil suffers the alienation of exile." Perhaps we can reflect on these words as we embark on this seminar. And on that note, I'd like to hand over to Anas to welcome our speakers. Thank you.
Dr. Abdul Qadir, Yemen is a remote country in South Africa. From South Africa, we'd like to know the root causes of the current situation in Yemen, how we can understand the conflict and the outcomes of this conflict. As Dr. Corey spoke before, she said that the humanitarian crisis is one of the worst in the world. How we reach to this result?
The situation, we are in South Africa. So we'll start by asking a question. Can anyone here in South Africa imagine the return of apartheid? Next to that, can you imagine it coming back with the use of arms and with the support of a foreign enemy country? I mean, that is how all problems started. So we have our own version of supremacists, and we have got them in Yemen, and they made a coup in September 21st, 2014, against a transitional political process which is sponsored by the international community, by the United Nations, and by the Security Council. The Security Council, actually, they came to Sana'a in the most unusual step, that they held an official meeting in Sana'a to say they guarantee the continuation of this transitional process and the outcomes of the national dialogue, that it was sponsored and financed by the United Nations. And these people just made a coup. That coup brought back supremacists, our version of pure apartheid in South Africa. Now, that coup led to another thing. The arrival of Iran to Yemen. Ignoring the presence of Iran in Yemen will lead to nothing. Without tackling the rule of Iran in Yemen, we are lost and we are doing nothing. Actually, we have 5 wars in Yemen, not one war. The first one is between Yemenis versus Yemenis. And it is Yemenis who are Houthis against what we call the legitimacy or Sharia. The second war is between Yemenis and Iranis who came in to support this coup and those Houthis. The third war is the Saudis came in because they couldn't just bear having these Iranians coming to their southern borders, where they have encircled them already along the northern borders. The Iranians have already controlled Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, and now are coming to Yemen to finish the job. The other war, the fourth war, is the Iranians came forcibly and attacked the Saudis. It is an Irani-Saudi war. They attacked the jewel of that kingdom, Aramco's Al-Kharis and Al-Baqiq and Al-Khars facilities, oil facilities. That was, some people consider it as the Pearl Harbors of the kingdom. The fifth war, that were 4-4, is a war by proxy. I'm sorry, between the Saudis and the Iranis, but inside Yemen, and the Yemenis who are perishing in that war. I will go now. What are the options in front of us? And here I'm just reflecting on what is written in every think tank and all the analysts of the world and all the foreign experts of the world. That's what some of them say, the options they're offering us. Some of them say, okay, you can't stand to these forces. Houthis are far more superior in force, in armed, in firepower over the Yemenis. And the Iranis are stronger than the Saudis who are supporting you. The other option, okay, this country, let us be realistic. We hear them. I mean, the think tanks and the analysts, they say Yemen is now divided into 5 areas, and each area is controlled by warlords, and they have their turfs. So let us divide Yemen into 5 regions according to realities on the ground. But these realities on the ground, actually, they are not Yemeni made. They are made by foreign powers, and they are financed by foreign powers, and they are nurtured by foreign powers. They are not Yemenis. Sorry. Also, this will not bring stability, and we will keep living in tragedies. Now the third options, which is my option, and which was the option of the transitional process, which was internationally sponsored, is to let Yemenis have a social contract and to have the rule of law. This is the only, under one Yemen. Fragmented Yemen is never on the table, should never be on the table. This is the only guarantee that Yemen will be stable and will get prosperity and will be a good asset for the region and for the world. This is the only possible way.
I would like to stop with this point, and we would like to go to the Project Director General Turki Al Malki, who's joining us online.
Situation in Yemen, I think it's very important that we talk about the situation in Yemen before 2015 as being briefed by His Excellency the Ambassador. So we know that Yemen was suffering from instability in terms of political and also economy and military situation. The economic situation in Yemen was not that good before the campaign. It started in 2015, even controlled by the Houthi in 2014. The terrorist group have taken Yemen before 2014 as a safe haven. So we have seen how the ISIS and also the AQP have moved to Yemen. They try to find the suitable area to launch their malign and hostile activity in the region. 2014, the GCC have invited all Yemeni parties after the Houthi have refused to sign the agreement for the comprehensive talk between the Yemenis. They have invited the Yemenis to come to Riyadh and to talk about the issues and to have a political solution in Yemen. And instead of that, they have done and they have practiced heavy exercise on our southern border using heavy weapons they got it from Iran. And we know how Iran, they start supporting the Houthis since 2013. And Jihan was one of the ships was seized with heavy allied weapons came from Iran. That time, the President Abdurrahman Mansour Hadi have asked the kingdom and also the GCC, the Arab League, and also dropped the request to the UN Security Council 24 March 2015 for defending the Yemeni people and also for the collective security. So we have started the campaign, and the reason behind it is to protect the Yemeni people from the Houthi and their hostile act. The objective or the military objective for the decisive storm is to protect the Yemeni people in the cities and in villages, and also to restore the legitimate government which is recognized by the international community, and also to end the coup which started on 21st September 2014. So the war in Yemen did not start in March 2015, but it started when the Houthi have controlled or they made their coup against the Yemeni government. And also the final one is the Saudi initiative, which being announced in March 2021. So the articles or the component or the element of the agreement is to open Sana'a International Airport and also to open the port of Al-Hudaydah, and also to go immediately for a ceasefire and comprehensive ceasefire in whole Yemen. The Houthi have reviewed the initiative and is still on the table. And we are working with the special envoy, the UN special envoy, and also with the special envoy from the United States that we need to bring the Houthi, and we are welcoming all the initiative to solve the issue in Yemen. Putting the accountability on the Iranian regime by supporting the Houthi with advanced component and major component of TBNs and UAV and fast load. We do think it's the responsibility for the international community to work with the special envoy and to bring the Houthi to the table and to have a sustainable solution. If Yemen came safe and secure, stable, the whole region will be secure, and also the international security will be achieved in this matter.
Okay, Turkey, we would like to thank you for all the details that you're providing us. And I'd like just to gain time to go to the next speaker. And if you may remain with us until the end of the event, just to get to the questions from the audience. I'll go now to Mr. Bhabha. I believe you've been in Yemen twice. You witnessed the national dialogue. And you see all the parties involved in the situation to reach to what we can call a social contract with a new constitution, with a new law in Yemen, to build a long-term peace. Do you think, from your view, what would happen for the country then that collapsed in a civil war? What was missing in our national dialogue? Was it the mistake part what we are suffering from the war? Was it part of the national dialogue because we failed to reach to social contract?
The apartheid system was in one way designed to have the ethnic impulses of the 11 different tribes we have in this country supersede the notion of a state. It was designed to allow people to have their ethnic impulses more important than what nationhood is all about. And the South African solution, for all its weaknesses, we had many strengths. And one of the greatest successes, I believe, that we had in the South African solution was to create the notion of a statehood, a nationhood, and enable people to have a patriotism to one nation rather than their ethnic. So we formed and forged a South African identity. And that was facilitated by creating a dialogue that was based on three principles. One was inclusivity. So no matter that they were included in the national dialogue. That enabled us to have a sense of ownership in the solution itself. And it was the second element that contributed to our success. And the third, emanated from the first two, was building a degree of trust. So around the world in our experiences, we have seen the greatest of agreements on paper, but with shortcomings. One is the absence of strong institutions and that would protect the interests of the state. I was in Yemen in 1995. At that stage, there was a major party from the south that did not participate in the dialogue. And if you recall, that posed a major threat to the democratic agreements that came into being. And later it proved to be fatal.
Professor Lowry, it's nice to see you, Professor Lowry. I will start my questions to you with the point that Mr. Bhabha he's just mentioned it, is about inclusivity. In Yemen, we all the parties, they join a national dialogue. Even those who have not formed a political party. For example, Al-Houthi, he joined the national dialogue and then he turned against it. He joined the national dialogue without forming a political party. He just joined the national dialogue as armed militia. Was it a mistake from your view to join, to put a form, not political form, in a national dialogue?
I'm not an expert on Yemen, so I should say that at the outset. My expertise lies in national dialogue and mediation, and I'm really interested in the tension that arises in mediation and national dialogues where some or more of the parties are perceived as villains. You know, we like to view mediation in a kind of romantic fashion, but it's a non-violent cooperative process of bringing parties to agreement. But in reality, as we've seen in Yemen, there is often a serious tension where one or more of the parties is perceived by others as villains. And this was true also of South Africa. It's characteristic of a civil war that the conflict parties view each other as villains and do not want to collaborate with their enemy and don't want to share power with their enemy. There's a pragmatic bottom line, however. You either defeat your opponent, or if military victory is simply pragmatically unattainable, then you have no option but to go into a negotiated settlement with your enemy and then sharing power with your enemy. And we did that in South Africa, and it is politically, psychologically, and emotionally very painful. I'm interested in mediation processes where there is an overarching mandate, usually from the UN Security Council or the African Union, which excludes one of the parties from a proper negotiation process. And I think this is what happened with the UN Security Council Resolution 8216 of 2015. It was an exclusionary mandate and has had a negative impact on attempts to end the conflict by basically taking a win-lose position, by recognizing the legitimacy of the government of President Hadi, and by calling on the Houthi effectively to surrender. That resolution may have been justified on democratic grounds because the Houthi put forth to power through force against an elected government, but that resolution made a mediated solution impossible. Because the only possible mediated solution is a power sharing solution. And this is currently the position of many international actors, and it has long been the position of the United Nations mediators, and it was resisted by both sides because of the wording of the UN Security Council Resolution 2016. So the Houthi have argued at the mediation sessions and stayed away from the mediation for a long time on the grounds that the UN Security Council Resolution calls on them effectively to give up. And why would they do that if they think they're in a military strong position? It also calls on Hadi, it accepts the legitimacy of President Hadi, and Hadi has long argued that if the Security Council has recognized his legitimacy, then there is no basis for any negotiated settlement with the Houthi. So let me repeat that I appreciate how difficult this is politically, psychologically, emotionally, as a South African member of the African National Congress before the unbanning, involved in the negotiations with the minority regime. I understand how difficult that is to engage in dialogue, negotiations, and some kind of power sharing with your enemy. But if you can't win militarily, then pragmatically you have no alternative. And I would end by saying that although the Houthi did participate in the national dialogue, they were excluded from the GCC initiative. So when the Gulf Cooperation Council was doing the mediation and an elite pact was formed that was to lead to the exit, the resignation of President Saleh, the Houthi were not involved in that. And then when the United Nations took over that mediation, led by Jamal Benmar, leading to the GCC implementation plan, again, the Houthi were not part of that. So I think if there's a lesson to be learned, one of the lessons is about the danger of excluding a significant actor which has the ability to resort to large-scale violence. Let me end there. Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, I'd like to ask you, you've been in so many Middle Eastern countries. You served in Syria, Libya, Saudi Arabia. You know the differences between South Africa and the Middle Eastern countries. And Yemen, one of the complications of the Middle East, or we can say one of the main complications in the Middle East. What we can learn from South Africa and their transformation to democracy?
My view is clouded by my experience in the Middle East, particularly my experience in Libya. People who have the same language, the same culture, the same religion, and the same school of thought go to war against one another. What is the reason? Somebody described it to me as bad solidarity and good solidarity. I think in the words of Ibn Khaldun, bad asabiya and good asabiya. I was taught that in the Middle East, because of what had emerged there, what were people fighting for? They were fighting, in fact, for the control of resources. And part of the problems in Africa has always been the question of the curse of resources, as President Mbeki had called it. And people fight over those resources continuously. After the uprising, and I don't call it a revolution because a revolution seeks to change a society. It was an uprising. The Al-Kib government was very popular. The first elections, people queued around the corner. The second elections, there were 4 people in the polling station when I walked into it. And the country then descended into civil strife. The role of militias, every city had its own militia to control these resources. You had 2+1 governments, 2 governments and an internationally recognized one. But the role of the UN becomes very interesting. With the first representative of the Security Council, Secretary General Ian Martin, there was success. He lived in Libya. He tried to bring people together, and he didn't move out of Libya and try to control it from outside. He was followed by Tariq Mitri, who had equal success in bringing people together and trying to resolve the problems. But some powers did not want the kind of success that they were bringing. And they replaced him by another resident outside of Libya who lived somewhere else. And that's the kind of UN problems that we need to examine, that people and SSRGs should be resident within the country. And then we went to the question of many tracks. I want to advise against many tracks. Many tracks don't work. Many tracks just create confusion. We are conscious of the Security Council resolutions 2216, 2451, and 2452, and other agreements that should support the UN track, such as the Stockholm Agreement and the Geneva Agreements. I want to talk now about the role of the UN in the South Africa Observer Mission. They were present in all our areas, in every city, in every town. There was part of the UN Observer Mission. They were there present alongside our own National Peace Accord volunteers. And the National Peace Accord was established by South African civil society, by the trade union movements, by the business community, by the faith-based communities, and all of them to bring about peace in South Africa, to create the conditions for negotiations. The UN also established the Exiles Committee, which I was the Secretary General for at one point. And then the UN also looked at the experiences of the liberation movement. The Harare Declaration, which had 4 points, including military operations and its mandate, and the mandate and the modalities for negotiations, which were important. Internally in the country, those of us who were part of the liberation movements went to a conference called the Conference for a Democratic Future. It was the first time that many of us exposed ourselves openly in the apartheid regime as being part of the liberation movements. Both sides recognized that we could not achieve a military victory. And as the saying of President Mandela said once, that it's one ship called South Africa, despite the differences of class, of race, of region, and of language, that the negotiators recognized that all had to be involved. Now I want to re-emphasize what Muhammad had said, that nobody should be left out of negotiations. Everyone should be involved. No organization, no matter how small, had to be included. The objective to establish a non-racial, non-sexist democratic state, that the demon of tribalism need to be managed. All the languages and cultures would be promoted. South Africa is a secular state recognizing all faith groupings. The establishment of a leader of a house for traditional leaders. The establishment of a commission for religious affairs. And then we had what we established, the Section 9 institutions, which was the Public Protector, the Human Rights Council, the Auditor General, etc. The arms of the state and parliament and the executive were separate, and the judiciary. The three spheres of the state, national, provincial, and region, were spheres of state and not considered to be top-down. Addressing the question of language in a particular region. One of the challenges that we presently look at is the internal divisions and the contraction that we have to look at, and the battle for a better South Africa, a better Africa, a better world, and a better region. I want to then go on to have we achieved unity in diversity in a nation that was historically divided on race, class, and gender? My answer is yes. We should invite the Yemeni motive forces to a small, collectively constituted conference in South Africa to share the South African experience. We need to do so, A, as civil society, and B, that needs to be facilitated by the state, but not undertaken by the South African state. In support of the UN track, the objective to find solutions there needs to be to look at what the Yemenis want, what they can achieve, how they can become involved, and it is a Yemeni problem that needs Yemeni solutions. But also, I think what is important is to note that regional and international players have a role. Regional and international players have a habit of exacerbating conflict for their own interests. And their own interests are, what can we get out of this? How do we control the resources? And how do we take this forward? I recall being sent to Baghdad by this young man sitting on my left here to talk about reconciliation, forgiveness, and sulh. And one of the things that hit me there was that the UN official sitting there said that forgiveness was a Judeo-Christian concept and not an Islamic concept. That they didn't recognize that the issue of Fath Makkah and those kind of issues, they were unaware of the situation in Baghdad. I mean, I had gone into Baghdad, had gone into the green zone, out of the green zone. Some of them had been there for 5 years, had never left the green zone. So they sit in an island, and I think they need to come out of the island to become activists on the ground and to understand how people actually change. If President Mandela had not negotiated from prison, would we have had a South Africa that was transformed today? If the ANC outside and other liberation movements had not negotiated and put down the principles and the conditions for negotiations from outside, would we have achieved the changes that we did? We brought it to South Africa, the Libyans, we brought them under the radar. We didn't tell the world. We didn't make a big noise out of it. We brought them here, and 3 of us were involved in those negotiations. We brought them here. We can do the same and a similar exercise for the Yemenis. And the Yemenis, I don't think it's intractable if we can actually share the experience and actually get to the point where we recognize that Yemen is for the Yemenis, and this is a Yemeni solution. It's not going to be a US solution. It's not going to be a UN solution. To take the UN, to take them and make them observers in the process, but not active participants in the process. To take all the regions, in that instance, to make them part of the process. For example, in the negotiations in Libya, with the first 2 SGs, we were part of it. We were invited to come to the Big 5 meetings as Africa. When the third one was appointed for their own reasons, he didn't even recognize that Africa existed. I thank you very much.
And I would like to have a very long private conversation with you to discuss this. Okay, because of the time factor, I give up on explaining what I wanted to say about Yemen, to tell you what is Yemen. I'm not an official. I'm not a person of legalese. I am not a bureaucrat, and I am not a diplomat. So when I say something, I'll just say it as it is. Not because it is politically correct or what one must say. So before commenting on your question, and watch my lips, there will never be a negotiated peace deal with Houthis and Iran. We will never get to that. They insist that they are winning and they should go on until the end to achieve their dreams or illusions. They can call it what it is. The Houthis believe that they are chosen by the God, and they have a decree by the Prophet that they should rule Yemen. And we are only should be subordinates to them. And they are supported by a regional power which knows what she is doing with 3, 4, 5 things. One, they call it strategic patience. One is asymmetrical war. One is self-reliance. One, just wait. The West and our foes and our opponents have a very short span of attention. And we will just, the Iranians, they believe they will eventually prevail. Any negotiations, any mediation for them, it is only a chance, an opportunity to gain political gains and material gains. And they love mediators, they love UN, they love international envoys because they refuse to talk to them unless they give them so and so. And they give them so and so. And then after they expire, they can kick them, as they did in Stockholm. In Stockholm Agreement, they acquired so many precious things that we made us boil in rage. I am against the Stockholm Agreement. I was furious when it was held, and I was furious about how it was handled, and that I was at the end sad because of the gains that they acquired, legitimization. Before that, they were just rebels before the Stockholm Agreement. Then they became a conflict, a partner in a conflict. That is absurd for me and for the majority of Yemenis and for the silent majority of Yemen. Okay, you want we have a social contract, which is the national dialogue outcomes. We discussed all this inclusive and conclusive blah, blah for 10 months. And we love it. We love the national dialogue outcomes. And we love the constitution that we got based on it. You want to reinvent the wheel? Okay. Give us another 5-star hotel and let us stay in it for 10 months. And then you will get nothing because they feel they are stronger and because they feel they are winning and they will just jump like the Black Widow. After they achieve what they want, they will discard everything and will go on for the 5th Arab country. I mean, they have acquired already Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and now they are finishing Yemen. If you want to give them another Arab country, we are on the road to that. And there is only one way to get around this quagmire. We, the silent majority of Yemen, refuse this and we are willing to pay the price to save ourselves. But on our own, we can't. We have a coalition. The coalition, like all coalitions, I mean, I can recall what went on between Charles de Gaulle and Eisenhower and Churchill. I can recall what went on between Churchill himself and Eisenhower. I mean, things can happen between allies. Oh, I say to our friends in the coalition, unless you win the hearts and the minds and the respect of the average common person in Yemen, we all will be doomed into a very bad situation. I'm a physician. I can't fill the gap of I can't go on saying something without point. I finished, period. Thank you.
I don't want to understate the role of the lobby in the United States, but the issue is what incentive is there for the Houthis, as you say, to enter into an agreement? What incentive is there for the neighboring countries? And I'm sure a stable Gulf would be an incentive for every country, regardless of what their personal interests are. And I think our task is to identify those incentives. So I can understand some of the anxieties about what I'm saying, Doctor.
Such a great statement as the end of our workshop. I'd like if anyone would like to have a comment.
I'm honored to be here today, and I'm thankful for the University of Pretoria for giving us this opportunity to participate. I'd like to thank the speakers and all the speakers for what they have said, and especially Ambassador Dangour. But we believe that the Yemeni crisis is very difficult, and also the legitimate government, the coalition led by Saudi Arabia, are trying their best to find a peaceful solution for this conflict. This conflict created by the Houthis and by another another regional country, which is Iran. The Iranian regime is playing a very negative role in this conflict, and they are trying to keep it longer and longer. So we had tried this negotiation, what you are, Ambassador Dangour, between the Yemenis in Kuwait for 3 months, and also in Stockholm. So creating another track of mediation, it's gonna distract the efforts made by the United States and the Sultanate of Oman and the United Nations. and will give the Houthis the option to select and to move from this track to the other track. So we believe, we appreciate the role of South Africa, and we think that the South African government can play a very important role based on the historical relationship between South Africa and the Iranian. So if they are your friend, so you have to make more pressure to the Iranian to convince them, also to criticize their intervention, not in the Yemen, in all Arab countries. So if I give you an example, South Africa intervened in Mozambique. So, and supporting the Mozambican government because if there is another rebels in Mozambique. We are doing the same. We have the same situation in Yemen. So if these rebels in Mozambique control Mozambique, then I believe all the SADC country will fight this. So if you give these rebels this terrorist group to fight and to control the countries, I think you are supporting the wrong person. So we think the Houthis must engage in these negotiations if they want to find a peaceful solution for Yemen. And I think the South African government can play a role, and not just the international community. They have to make more pressures against the Iranian in order to have the Houthi to listen to and to engage in this negotiation and to find a peaceful solution. And also, I want to also emphasize that Saudi Arabia will never let the Houthis or any Iranian militia to threaten our citizen and the people live in Saudi Arabia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for your inputs. We still have a few minutes. I will have Mr. Ambassador Ahmed and also Colonel Turki Al-Malki. He's joining us for a few minutes. So,
with the Houthis, the Yemeni side or the other side against him give up their hands to a lot of initiatives of the peace. The last one, initiative of Saudi Arabia. Therefore, if you read these small papers to see how many times or attempts gave to the Houthis to come to the table of the peace negotiation. Every time, every attempt, they failed it by them, not by other sides. We welcome the Yemenis, all the Yemenis, they need the peace and the security and the suitability. But the other side, even now, the biggest negotiation for 3 months in Kuwait, just they sign it. They take their decision from Iran or instructions from Iran, not signed, and they draw themselves from the Kuwait. Therefore, please read this and you see how many. And I request now from our brothers of Qatar to try to make their efforts with them and convince them of table. Under there is the initiative of Gulf countries. Second one, the outcomes of the resolutions of United Nations. This basic, they call it the road for the peace and security and stability for Yemen for future. Don't need temporary solution for them just to make peace for months or 2 years. We need it for future, like what happened in South Africa. They find their solution for temporary solution. They make it, and by one they take his, they call it privilege in the society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for your inputs. And finally, we will have Colonel Turki Al-Malki with us.
Sana'a is the fourth capital being controlled by IRGC. The issue is those militia, they are sharing the experience, they are sharing the existence and the interest. And all these weapons between Hezbollah in Lebanon and also the militia in Syria and Iraq is not just a threat to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or the GCC. It's threatening the international community. It's making an influence for the interest in the region, especially in the Red Sea and also in Bab al-Mandeb. So looking to the geopolitical situation, how also Al-Qaeda, AQAP, and also ISIS in Yemen has the connection with Al-Shabaab of Somalia and has the connection with Al-Qaeda in the Sahel countries, has the connection also with the Al-Qaeda in Al-Maghrib Al-Arabi. So we are looking to international situation and a threat to the international community. So the influence of that is coming to Yemen. We cannot say that we are looking for military victory in Yemen. It can take a long time, but the issue, we do, let me put it in this way. We do believe strongly the political solution is a tool in the hand of the politician people. So we are putting more pressure on the Houthi so they can come to the table and give some positions and reaching the political solution. The last point I would like to express that we, in the new world order, you can't have a country inside a country. For example, we cannot accept Yemen with two countries in that, let's say, as an entity. Hezbollah representing a country inside country in Lebanon. The Houthi, they want to do the same thing, having another country inside the country, and that cannot be accepted from any state actor having major component of weapons, advanced TBMs, UAV, cruise missile, and all kind of weapons. So we have to look to the situation from the geopolitical situation, and we can take it down all the way the social fabric in Yemen. They can sit together, and as I mentioned in my talk, one of the things, or the most important thing, that putting the accountability on Iran for stopping the weapons to go to the hand of the Houthi will make the Yemeni come to the table and reach the political solution. Thank you.
To take the floor the second time, I just wanted to comment on the comment of my brother, the ambassador of Yemen, when he mentioned or he requested the assistance from Qatar to pressure the Houthis in order to come to the negotiation and to come to the table of dialogue. And I want to just remind him that there are many declarations, GCC declarations, mentioning in particular the role of Qatar in mediation, and in particular statements came up from meetings from the United Nations in Geneva, in New York and Brussels, and I was there as envoy of my country in these meetings, and they mentioned Qatar by name. And GCC statements mentioned Qatar by name and thanked Qatar for its efforts, and Qatar was among the first countries that sent envoys before 2010 to Yemen in particular, in order to convince the Houthis to come to the negotiation table. So it's not something new, and we are doing this, and we will continue to do this for your good, and as an also active member in the GCC and in the international community and in the League of Arab States. Your envoys and your foreign minister was in Qatar a few times this year, and statements also came up from meetings between him and between my boss, the deputy prime minister and foreign minister. Also thanked Qatar for its role, but again, it takes two to tango, and it takes a teamwork in order to achieve a big job. And nothing said that if South Africa or other countries, in my humble understanding as a UN diplomat, if they offered to help when it comes to mediation, nothing will prevent South Africa from consulting with Yemen, from consulting with Saudi Arabia, from having the consent of the concerned parties, because no mediation process can succeed without the consent of the parties to the conflict. And this goes without saying, I assure you, that it will happen. But we are here to make a use of our time, and you chose South Africa to be the venue for this discussion. So you have to expect that South Africa will say we want to do something about it. Thank you.
Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for giving us the opportunity to listen to this very engaging topic. I just want to make one point because, we as South Africans, offer to share our experiences. And I think all the speakers have spoken about the South African experience. But I think one of the points that we need to make very clear, which I think may not have come out evidently clear, was the fact that mediation is just a process. Muhammad Baba, Muhammad Dango, Professor Nathan spoke about a negotiated settlement, and they will tell you that what we had in South Africa was a transitional arrangement that culminated in a constitution only in 1996. So the notion to think that we will be able to find a solution immediately through mediation, I think it won't happen. So you create an enabling environment to reach that consensus by a process that we would always say as Africans, a Yemeni solution to a Yemeni problem and driven by the Yemeni people, not by South Africa, not by Saudi Arabia, not by Qatar, not even by the Iranians as we would like to think, but by the Yemeni people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Ahmed Bakal, and as His Excellency Ambassador Tariq mentioned me, I represent the League of Arab States as in my capacity as a charter affairs, not the ambassador. And I'm so happy to participate and be here today, listen all the wisdoms and insights of the expertise and ambassadors here. Yeah, very happy to be here. I took the follow. I asked for the intervention when His Excellency Ambassador Tariq mentioned me, and I was afraid that some scholars and experts here will think that there is a position of Arab League towards the Yemen crisis, and they would like to hear from me. But the word that I wanted to say is that the Arab League position towards Yemen is the common Arab members of the organization position. I don't know if I said it nicely or not. The position of all Arabs through the organization of Arab League. Remember, we are a regional organization. Members are the decision makers of the council decides, and a secretariat. We are just like to implement it. That so the common position is the position of the organization. That's one thing. The other thing is I am originally from just opposite of Yemen, very like neighbor of Yemen. I'm from Somalia, and when we are talking about situation like this, the experience of my country like comes into my mind. So what I would like to suggest and remind you all is that sometimes it's quite difficult that people from the same place have the same religion, have the same language, and also look like each other. All of them still cannot agree on their interests. It's a difficult to you to understand. But what I can say is that it happens, and it happens because of the foreign intervention. I'm not mentioning any country. We all know what Iran is doing in the region, but the foreign intervention sometimes can talk to your brother differently, even your brother. So what I will suggest here today is that United Nations has different chapters that assist like chaoses or crises like this. So chapter 8, I think, provides the constitutional basis for the involvement of the regional organizations to the crisis. So I think a hybrid peacekeeping mission that's involved, like, the regional entities like GCC, Arab League, with the United Nations, of course, could be a solution in my point of view. And the reason is that, like, there must be force that stops the fire, I think, if they don't agree. That's what I will say. Thank you.
I would like to thank you all for your inputs. This event was a part of my field research to obtain master's degree in peace studies. And I feel like I'm going to pass with distinction with all this great inputs. So thank you all for your come, and we can have some refreshments by the dining room. Thank you so much.